Here we're going to do a couple examples from section 9.2 on page 518 of your book. These have to do with ratios and proportions. So the first question here we'll do is number 12. It says, what is the more economical purchase? A 30-ounce jar of mayonnaise for $4.29 or a 48-ounce jar for $6.29. So really what we're doing here is we want to find out the price per ounce, and then we'll choose the one that is less expensive. So the price per ounce, let's start with the 30-ounce jar for $4.29. So if we say $4.29 divided by 30 ounces, that's all we're doing there is finding that ratio, and that's going to give us the price per ounce. So we plug that into our calculator, and we come up with $4.29 divided by 30 ounces gives us about 14.3 cents per ounce. 14.3 cents per ounce. So that is for the 30-ounce jar. All right, 14.3 cents for the 30-ounce jar. So now how much is the price per ounce for the 48-ounce jar? Well, that's just going to be $6.29 divided by 48 ounces. Right, and we get $6.29 divided by 48 ounces, and that's going to be 13.1 cents per ounce. So we just look at those and we say, well, this one is the more economical choice, so that's going to be our answer. The 48-ounce jar for $6.29 is a little cheaper per ounce than the 30-ounce jar for $4.29. So ratios, we're just looking at ratios here, price per ounce. All right, so that is a ratio problem in the form of a word problem. This is a ratio problem just set up for you to solve for one unknown. When we have one fraction on one side of the equation and one fraction on the other side of the equation, we can use a very nice method that we call cross multiplying. Whenever you have one fraction on one side, one fraction on the other side, this numerator times this denominator will always equal the other direction, this numerator times this denominator. So in this case, we just say 65 times A equals 14 times 20. All right, and if you need to, you go to your calculator here, multiply that out, we get 65. 10 times 14 is 140, so twice that is going to be 280. And then we're just dividing both sides by 65, right? I divide this side by 65, I get the variable that I'm trying to solve for. I divide this side by 65, 280 divided by 65, and that's going to give me, rounded to 2 decimals, that's going to be 4.31. Right? And now I can check that by going back to the original equation and making sure that that's true. Right? Put 65 divided by 20 into your calculator. Okay, 65 divided by 20. You put that in your calculator, you get 3.25. Right? If you put 14 over 4.31, you're going to get 3.248, and that's because we rounded a little bit here, but that is going to be very close to 3.25. The only reason it's a little bit off when you do this ratio is because we rounded, and this number was actually more equal to 4.30769 and a couple more numbers. But if you put this in, you'll get even closer to 3.25. But you can see that is, if you were asked to round to 2 decimals, this would be your answer, 4.31. All right, so ratios. Let's look at one more from this section. This is number 16 in your book, and it gives you a table of populations of 3 countries here, Australia, India, and the USA. Gives you their populations and the area of the nations in square miles. And then it asks 2 questions. Which has the lowest population density? And the population density we will calculate here. Population density is the population divided by the area. And that's going to tell you how many people per square mile. So we want to know which one has the lowest, and then we're going to answer this question: how many more people per square mile are there in India than in the USA? So let's figure out the population densities, and then we'll be able to answer those questions. So again, population density is the population divided by the area, the number of people per square mile. So for Australia, we put in 22,751,000 for the population. 22,751,000, and we divide that by the area, 2,938,000. We're going to end up with 7.74. Again, rounded to 2 decimals. So in Australia, there are 7, almost 8 people per square mile. I don't know if it asks you to round here. Let me check on this. Round to the nearest whole number. So it asks us to round to the nearest whole number. So we're going to round this to the nearest whole number is 8. All right, so around 8 people per square mile. So not a whole lot, right? Australia is pretty big. It's a lot of empty space in the middle. If you've ever examined Australia, all the population is on the coastlines. So it has a pretty low population density. As compared to India, we're going to expect to get a much larger number here. 1,251,696,000 people divided by the area of 1,146,000, and rounded to the nearest whole number is 1,092. So India is quite a bit more crowded than Australia. 1,092. That is a lot of people per square mile. In the USA, let's get that one, 321,369,000 divided by 3,535,000. And that gives us around 91. All right, so we can see India is by far the most crowded, or the most people per square mile. The US is next with 91, and Australia is way down there with 8. So which has the lowest population density? Very clearly, the answer to that is Australia. Australia, if I could spell, is the answer. And how many more people per square mile are there in India than in the US? Well, we're just taking the difference between the India population density and the US population density. And it looks like around 1,000 more people per square mile in India than there is in the US. All right, so that is ratios and proportions, section 9.2.